Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris.
My name is Justin.
And my name is Mike. As always, we like to start off every episode talking about what is on our minds, which is usually the media we have been consuming for the past week. And then we move into our feature review. This week, we are reviewing Widows, written and directed by Steve McQueen. It will contain a spoiler-free section before moving into spoilers. So join us.
And don't forget that each month we review a film from the Criterion Collection, which is voted on by the listeners. So go check out last month's episode on The Blob, and then look forward to our next episode on Tokyo Story.
And if you want to send us questions to answer about Tokyo Story or topics you want us to discuss for our Criterion film or whatever film we're watching next, you can follow us
any movie. Don't be picky.
Yeah, if you want to send those in, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. You can email your questions and topics you want us to discuss to casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And as always, don't forget to go onto iTunes, give us a 5-star review, and then also subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you use.
Thanks in advance.
Yeah.
And with that, are we ready to move into what has been on our minds this week?
Of course.
Let's do this.
That's why I come up here.
Let's do it. All right, Justin. What's on your mind, man?
The Princess Bride.
Typical.
Yeah, so I
I'm sorry.
Bought the film. No, it's typical of me, I think. Like, maybe compared to, like, all the other movies I've only seen once.
For those of you who don't know Justin, this is a typical... What, have you only seen this once?
No. I said compared to, like, all the... I was going to say compared to all the movies I've only seen once versus, like, how many times I've seen this one. Because
that makes sense.
It's a lot.
I should probably talk less when you're talking. Sorry.
Yeah. You could argue that it's typical, basically.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought. I thought it was typical of you because, anyway, I was about to say, anyone who doesn't know Justin, The Princess Bride, I feel like he's talked about this movie a lot in probably the 16 years I've known him.
He's
probably
talked about it for at least 15 of those years.
Yeah. So, anyways, go on.
Oh, yeah. So I got the new Criterion version of it as part of the Barnes & Noble 50% off sale.
Fancy.
Yeah, along with the film that we talked about last week, All That Heaven Allows, the film that I talked about on my What's on Our Minds. And I decided to watch it, I guess it was Thursday night. I'm trying to remember which night specifically because I watched about half of it and then got sleepy. And it was like, oh, I'll finish this later. And then, like, the next morning, the news broke that William Goldman, who wrote Princess Bride, died. It was kind of like a
huge bummer.
A weird coincidence and a huge bummer at the same time.
He also wrote Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah, All the President's Men.
The Mel Gibson version of Maverick from the 90s.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah, lots of good and interesting things. Anyway, so I ended up finishing the film a couple of nights ago. I just restarted it from the beginning, even though I'd already watched the first half, just to get, like, the whole thing in one go.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've seen the film a bunch, so I like it, so it's probably no surprise to anyone listening that it's great. It's still great. I think it's so watchable and, like, just pleasant. Like, from start to finish, it's just a pleasant film. I don't know, it's the kind of film that, like, I could just watch. Like, I could probably go home and watch it again tonight because it just moves so fast. It's so witty and charming and, like, full of, you know, funny scenes that you remember and, like, quotes that you remember that, like, like, the movie just flies by to me. Like, it felt like no time at all had passed, like, from watching it. And I had just watched the first half again, you know, like 2 days prior. Like, it wasn't a struggle to sit through it all. And it's great. Like, the Blu-ray looks pretty good from Criterion. I don't know that I remember what it looked like on DVD because it's been a while since I've seen it, but it did look good.
Is there anything new about the Criterion release that is unique to the Criterion version?
I'm not sure. I know that there's a lot of the special features are from previous editions of Princess Bride.
There's been like a million editions of this movie.
I know there's some interesting things that they've done, and I don't know if this is from another version, but it feels like a more Criterion thing to do where they have William Goldman reading parts of the novel, but overlaid over the scenes. So you can have like
interesting
a comparison like of between the two,
Yeah, and I guess we should also say, for anyone who doesn't know, William Goldman also wrote the book, as well as the screenplay for The Princess Bride. So it's actually one of the like unique cases in films where the movie is considered a success, and you very rarely hear people like being like, well, the book is better, which it may be, but I don't think anyone considers The Princess Bride a lesser movie of anything, you know? It's considered a classic amongst everyone, and that very rarely happens.
Yeah, that's very true. Like, I'm not sure I know anybody who's actually read the book.
Yeah, I don't either. I just know that it's beloved by the people who have.
My sister has read it, and much like Justin talks about The Princess Bride, the movie, my sister talks about The Princess Bride, the book. And she also loves the movie quite a bit.
I was about to ask, what are her feelings on the movie? But you just told me, so. Just backs up my point.
Yeah. But I assume both of you guys have seen this movie.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Do you guys like it?
Yeah, of course. I need to see it. I haven't seen it as an adult, I'll be honest with you. Like, since you and I have started rooming together when we were 19 or 20 years old, I have not watched this movie.
Did we watch it together like early in those days? Did I make you watch it?
Oh, man, I feel like if we did, that was the last time, and I would love to watch it again now.
I recommend it. I think that
I think about it a lot.
You'll have a good time. It's one of those movies that, you know, it doesn't seem to age. Like, it doesn't feel like one of those movies you watch as a kid that is like too kiddie when you watch it again as an adult. I think it ages with you, or like, I guess it doesn't age, but as you age, it stays just as good as always.
And also, it's infinitely quotable.
Yeah,
infinitely.
I don't think you know what that word means.
It's inconceivably quotable.
Yeah. So obviously, this movie doesn't need much of a recommendation from us, but yeah, it's good to hear that it's still great.
Yeah, and the case is really cool for the Criterion. It's like it's a literal book.
Looks like a storybook. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it does? It opens up?
Yeah. Like it opens up like a book.
Cool. Are there any actual pages to flip, or is it just kind of like a...
Like their little essay booklet is bound into it like a book. And then like the disc holder is behind all of that. But like the cover itself feels like a book. Like it's not plastic. That's not like cover art.
Classy.
Pretty rad.
Yeah, that does sound rad.
But I mean, that's all I've had time to watch this week. It's been pretty crazy. So,
yeah.
You know, we can move on to Mike. What is on your mind?
Yeah, like you, I haven't had a chance to watch much of anything, mostly because our schedules got all screwed up and we only recorded our last episode like 2 days ago. So I actually had to stop watching The Ballad of Buster Scruggs to come record. So I will be finishing that, and I'm digging it so far. I like the Coen brothers quite a bit. But today, the only thing I really have to talk about is Rocky. The original Rocky. In preparation for Creed 2, I rewatched the original Rocky. I've only ever seen it one time in my entire life, so it was nice to revisit it. It's a very basic film. I'm going to be watching Rocky 2 tonight, most likely, and I don't know how far into the Rocky franchise I'm going to go before Creed 2, but we'll see. I know it gets kind of ridiculous as the franchise goes on.
Which one's the one with the Russian? Is that 3?
I think it's 3 or 4, maybe 5. I don't know.
Don't most of them have a Russian in there?
Yeah, I think most of them do. I just know Rocky 1 doesn't because it's mostly about him and Apollo. Yeah, but anyway, you forget just how small a stakes it is in compared to the legend and the mythos that the franchise eventually became. You know, it gets all tied up in the Cold War and all kinds of stuff as the series goes on. You know what I'm talking about? But like, it starts out so simple.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know, it's pretty good. Stallone was really good and charismatic. You know, I think his franchises just have a tendency to go off the rails. Like the first Rambo, like First Blood, Part 1. You know, it starts out as this one thing about PTSD and then eventually becomes like a larger-than-life version of itself by the end of the franchise, you know?
Yeah, almost missing the point from what the first movie was.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds like Rocky, too.
Well, maybe. I can't say because I haven't seen a lot of the later Rockies. I've really am most familiar with the first one. But luckily, the first Creed film sort of rebooted the franchise and gave it new legs and kind of put it back where I think it belongs, which is right there with the first Rocky film. This movie is mostly just a character piece, and it's simple. It's to the point. There's no extra fat in the movie. I will say there are some things like the sexual politics that don't age super well in Rocky, especially after this last year or so. But there's nothing too egregious. It's not like Blade Runner, if you guys know what I'm talking about.
I do. Watching it again recently to get ready for 2049, I was like, whoa.
Yikes.
It's uncomfortable, and I don't like it.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of that in one area of Rocky, but it's not anything like it was in Blade Runner. But I will say, just overall, I think this movie is just delightful. You know, it's a well-made, short, breezy character piece wrapped up in the guise of a sports movie.
Great. Yeah, I've never really considered it a sports movie, despite it being about boxing, you know?
Yeah, you know, I don't really ever consider any boxing movies sports movies, to be honest with you. Like, even Raging Bull doesn't really feel like a sports movie to me.
Yeah.
Boxing doesn't feel like a sport, really.
No, it doesn't. Kind of like golf or bowling.
Or competitive hot dog eating.
Now that's a sport.
Yeah,
And,
it's certainly...
Excuse me, I don't know where the line is.
I will not let
I don't
you
either.
denigrate hot dog eating.
The line is wherever my mood is that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, when's the last time you guys saw Rocky?
A long time.
Yeah, I watched it one day at Blockbuster on a really slow night. That was the last time I watched it, and I probably got interrupted a little bit here and there.
Yeah, probably so.
Was that the first time also?
I've seen it before as like a kid, and I remember like all of the beats and stuff, but it was probably the first time since before I was a teenager that I had seen it.
One thing that struck me about the film was how Stallone can be like this really buff guy who like walks around swinging his fists and punches the air like a douchebag, but he doesn't seem like a douchebag. If you saw someone walking around like Rocky does, like fighting the air, practicing fighting nobody and boxing, you'd be like, what a douche. You know what I mean? Like,
unless they look like a really scrawny, nerdy guy, and I'm like, he's probably getting ready to stand up to some
training.
bully.
Yeah.
Who maybe the bully's a douche.
Maybe so. But generally speaking, I feel like someone who walks down the street like that would draw attention to themselves in like the worst way.
Right.
Anyway, I think it's a triumph that I can watch Sylvester Stallone punch the air and walk and think it's just charming.
Yeah, and be on his side and
like him immediately rather than just be like, God, what an annoying guy.
Yeah. As someone, speaking about me here, who has no interest in punching anyone or anything,
or even the air,
Rocky's pretty relatable.
There you go.
You know, one of the things that amazes me about this movie is that Sylvester Stallone wrote it, and the surprise I felt when I first found that out, that he wrote it. And did he win the Oscar? I know he was nominated for it. I don't know if he actually
believe
won.
so.
But yeah,
Stallone's not a terrible writer. I mean, he writes the Expendable movies, I think, so that's not the best thing to say. But like, the guy understands emotional arcs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he understands crowd-pleasing movies, which is what Rocky is. Like, I don't think he could make Raging Bull, but he can make Rocky.
Mm-hmm. Which
you know what I mean? I think Stallone's a pretty talented guy. Maybe not in the acting department, but I think he understands movies like inside and out. Like, he can make one, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Like, I would trust Stallone writing and directing his own movie before like Schwarzenegger or Bruce Willis or guys like that, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. Would you trust Stallone to be the governor of your state before Schwarzenegger?
Oh, good question.
That is a good question. No, because I think it's more enjoyable when Schwarzenegger speaks.
It's good criteria.
Whereas
no
with
comeback.
Stallone, I'm often like, man, he's struggling with this.
What?
Talking.
Yeah.
Like in Guardians 2 when he had to lay out the space lingo. He's like, Yondu, you should have known better than to betray the code of the... whatever.
Are we talking about Stallone? Because I do not remember him in that movie at all.
In Guardians 2?
No.
He's in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? Are we talking about the same Guardians 2? Okay.
Yeah, I saw it.
Well,
he's in there.
See it again. He has multiple scenes where he has to like lay out some sci-fi space lingo.
He kind of doesn't fit very well.
And he's not cut out for it.
Right. He's like, what am I doing here? But it's kind of fun in that way to watch him do that.
I enjoy it.
Writing that down in my journal.
All right. Anyways, that's all I've got for what's on my mind. Chris, what's up, man? What's on your mind?
I decided that I'd do something a little bit different for what's on our mind this week. As we are recording
Meaning
this...
you didn't get around to watching anything.
Well, I did actually, but it wasn't good enough to speak about on the show, and I wanted to do this more. So what I wanted to talk about is this week is Thanksgiving week. You know, I wanted to go around the table, the metaphorical podcast table, and ask you guys what you're thankful for in the movie realm, the movie and TV realm, like maybe a DVD release or a movie that came out that just really moved you. What are you thankful for this year? So I can go first if you guys want me to, and then we can pass it on to the next person, or I can choose somebody to go ahead. And well, how would you guys like to do this?
I think you should go first.
All right.
Set the example. Show us how it's done.
I will. So the thing I am thankful for this year, the year 2018, is Hereditary and The Haunting of Hill House and Halloween. And it didn't come out this year, but The Witch, which I watched this year. The Witch.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, well,
it's spelled with like the two V's sometimes.
Yeah.
No, at first I thought he said the bitch.
Oh. No, that's Cujo. That's that movie. Okay, anyways. Yes, I'm thankful for those movies because I've always kind of been horror adverse. I felt like a lot of the ones I watched in the past have been movies that are slight and don't mean a lot and are just there for the gore or the boobs or teen movies that are there to titillate as opposed to make you think. And I think all the movies and TV shows that I listed have given me a greater appreciation for horror film, and I'm thankful for those films that have come out this year that have been more than their genre. So that's what I am thankful for.
So that's interesting. So with your new appreciation for horror films, I wonder, do you have like the inkling to go back and tackle any other like classic horror? Like, would you be interested in for example, Rosemary's Baby or The Exorcist? I think those are both movies I would recommend based on Hereditary.
Both are movies I haven't seen yet, so I would like to see those.
Yeah, I think if you liked those movies and you are on like a horror kick lately and it's something that you haven't normally tackled, I would go for those two movies. I would also maybe say if you ever get the hinkling or the itch to go for a silent film, watch Nosferatu. I think Nosferatu is so good. I love it. It's one of my favorite. It's actually my favorite silent film, and it's one of my favorite horror films. Even if it is one of those movies you can't watch over and over again because it's a silent film, it's still a movie that I think about often and stands the test of time for sure.
Yeah, I believe I was shown scenes of that film, like in a college class, like a script writing class or a filmmaking class that I was in. But that is something I probably should go revisit for sure. I have seen the William Dafoe movie about the making of Nosferatu.
Shadow of the Vampire.
Shadow of the Vampire.
Yeah,
John Malkovich.
Yes, and I really enjoyed that film. And so maybe I'll do a double feature: watch Nosferatu and then do Shadow of the Vampire.
Then watch the Werner Herzog Nosferatu.
Oh, that's the one that I watched, I believe. The Nosferatu.
It's not as good.
Okay.
Also, my recommendation would be to seek out horror films and TV shows that start with H, because those seem like big hits with you.
Yes.
Seems like a real common thread.
Yeah, so if you guys know of any horror movies that start with an H.
Hellraiser.
Yeah.
The Hills Have Eyes.
What's that movie that just came out like last month? Hellfest.
Oh man. I think that's the type of movie that put me off of horror films in the first place.
Hobgoblin 2. I don't know if that's a movie, but it probably is.
I
will watch Hobgoblin 2 for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Unless there's anything else, I'm going to pass it off to Justin and ask what you're thankful for.
All right. I'm thankful for two things. Number one, the extended cut of Tree of Life coming out and me being able to watch that, and Criterion Collection for putting that together, because that just about made my year, having that.
It's not much of a surprise there.
Yeah,
you've only been talking about it for like half the year. So I think everyone's well aware, if they listen to this show, that you are thankful for that. But I'm glad it's still going strong, even after its
awesome.
release.
There'd have been half a year, I'd have had nothing to say without that. All. So pretty thankful. So moving on, the second thing that I'm really thankful for is that the Alamo Drafthouse opened up a brand new theater about 30 minutes from me, and going to that theater has been amazing every time, and just kind of wonderful to have so close to me. There was one kind of a little closer before, but it was older and not as nice and kind of smelled funny. And this is like brand new, plus the Alamo Drafthouse experience, which is far better than any other theater experience.
I agree.
Really the only theater I truly 100% enjoy going to nowadays. So thank you, Alamo.
Better be grateful for that. I'm so jealous of that. And
yeah, I'm still working with an AMC, a Studio Movie Grill, and then a couple whatever brands.
Oh, so sad.
I know.
I know.
I would love for an Alamo Drafthouse to be much closer to me. I'm super jealous. I would be thankful for that as well.
Yeah, maybe next year.
Yeah,
probably not.
Yeah, so that's all the things I'm going to say that I'm thankful for now. But there are more things than just two things that I'm thankful for in general. But we'll move on to Mike. What are you thankful for?
Sure. Keeping it film related, I will say I am thankful this year for the chance to see and review 2001: A Space Odyssey in IMAX.
Ooh,
that's a good one.
Good call.
Yeah, that felt important to me when it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
There are very few movie-going experiences in my lifetime that I can think of where I thought to myself in the middle of the movie, I will remember this. This is important. Like, this is a highlight of movies, to me. Seeing 2001: A Space Odyssey in IMAX had that feeling to me.
Yeah,
it
totally
felt
agree.
important.
Yeah, that's one. I mean, I had seen it before, but it's one that I'm constantly thinking about after seeing it in the IMAX because it's so powerful. And
exactly,
yeah,
it was my third time seeing it, and I don't know, I loved it more that time than both times put together before it. And just seeing it not on DVD, on like a big screen where you can't look at your phone and you can't look away and you just are stuck there and you can just see the artistry involved and just how this movie avoids every ounce of bullshit that makes other movies less good,
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. It's just bare bones and simple and classy. And anyway, so I'm thankful for that. If I hadn't seen it in IMAX, I wouldn't be able to gush about it like this. It would have just been another old movie that I watched a long time ago.
Right, exactly.
Makes sense.
On a more serious note, I will say I am thankful for this podcast.
Oh.
I am thankful that we created it. I'm thankful that every week, even if it's like a pain or if we have to reschedule or make plans and cancel plans and put off doing things, I'm grateful that we do this because we all don't live super close together, and it gives us a reason every week to get together and talk about something and have fun. And it forces us to watch movies we may not have otherwise wanted to watch every week when it's over and the episode is out. I'm always grateful that we took the time to do it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I totally agree. I was going to bring that up as well at the end of all of ours, but you beat me to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I totally agree. Very thankful. This has been great. It's, in some ways kind of reignited my love for film and watching movies and stuff, because I kind of went through a spell before where I was watching a lot fewer movies than I used to. And I picked it back up, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, and I think giving yourself a reason to watch them helps. Talking about it with friends helps. If you guys listening, if anyone listening, if you guys don't have friends to watch movies with, it makes all the difference. Follow along with us. Write into us. Watch movies with us. I promise you, if you have someone to talk about it with and dissect it with every week, even if you don't feel like watching a movie, do it anyway. Power through it. When it's over, you'll thank yourself and you'll have something to talk about.
Yeah, it's like being perspective for you guys is different opinions, and different perspectives on the movies, and showing me something that I didn't see when I originally saw the movie, right? That is a thing that I'm thankful for. Different opinions and perspectives on things that I've seen. Oh, and one more thing to be thankful for, and that's you, the listener, the person listening right now. Thanks so much for listening to this podcast, and we really appreciate it, for sure. No, thank you.
If you thought that was lame, write in and tell Chris.
Yeah, you can ridicule me later, but no, I'm appreciative of people
Just type
listening.
all caps with a bunch of exclamation points, lame, and we'll know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, but thanks for listening, for real, and thank you to anybody who sent in questions. I'm thankful for those because they always help.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much. And with that, gentlemen, is it time for our feature review?
I think it is.
Yep, it's feature review time.
All right, let's do it. Listen to our review next, coming up right now, of Steve McQueen's Widows.
Our husbands aren't coming back. We're on our own. My husband left me the plans for his next job. All I need is a crew to pull it off.
Why should we trust you anyway?
Because I'm the only one standing between you and a bullet in your head.
So as always, before we get going on Widows, just want to let you guys know that we're going to be doing a non-spoiler section up front where you won't be spoiling the movie at all. We'll be speaking very generally, and then we'll give you a very noticeable, not ignorable spoiler alert, and you can hit pause, go see the film, come back and finish the episode.
So, Widows, written and directed by Steve McQueen, starring Viola Davis, Michelle Rodriguez, Elizabeth Dickey, Daniel Kaluuya, and oh my God, there's so many people. Cynthia Erivo, Brian Tyree Henry. Oh my God, 3 names, Brian. Brian Tyree Henry, Colin Farrell, and Liam Neeson. And I'll add Robert Duvall while we're here.
It's also Elizabeth Debicki, I believe.
Oh, shut up. Anyway, sorry, Elizabeth Debicki and Brian Tyree Henry. Anyway, the IMDb synopsis says, set in contemporary Chicago amid a time of turmoil, 4 women with nothing in common except a debt left behind by their dead husband's criminal activities take fate into their own hands and conspire to forge a future on their own terms. Whew. I know that was a wordy synopsis.
Yeah.
If you need to take a break, that's fine. There's a lot of
drink
catch your
water.
breath.
Yeah. Everyone take a break. We'll be back in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, we're just dead air for the next 5 minutes.
JK, I think we should just actually move into our thoughts and not take a break. So, Chris, why don't you tell me what your thoughts are?
Yeah, this is a movie that I have been looking forward to since the teaser trailer that I saw, back in the spring, when they was in film festivals and things like that. So this is a movie I have been dying to see for a very long time, and the fact that Steve McQueen directed it, and the fact that Gillian Flynn helped write it, or just wrote it completely, I'm not exactly sure. Anyways, but yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a very long time and very excited to see it. I will say that there are some stunning sequences in this. It's shot very well. The opening sequence is a really great sequence, and then there's also a sequence with Colin Farrell in there that's just really interesting and really done well. I think across the board, the acting is really, really great. However, I think I'm left a little bit wanting on the edge of... I don't necessarily get a sense of who Viola Davis's character is before all this stuff starts to happen to her. I don't necessarily see an arc to her as much, and I'm on the fence about the movie kind of in general. And maybe that's because my expectations were so high, but at the same time, I think there are things that are holding it back from being just over-the-top great. Best Picture of the Year type movie. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation that we're about to have, because I kind of want to find out what you guys think and dive into this movie, and maybe I'll come out liking it more or liking it less. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the conversation. So, Mike, what are you thinking?
Sure. So, like you, I've been looking forward to this for a while. I avoided most of the trailers. I didn't see the first trailer until about a month ago. And that actually made me less excited than I was when I just knew about it as an idea. Because I thought the trailer seemed a little too heist movie-y, right? And then there's like, clips of Viola Davis saying things like, we're going to get away with it because they don't think we have the balls to pull it off. And stuff like that I was like, I don't know about the tone of this movie. So that said, going into it, I was almost dreading it because I was scared I wouldn't like it. Ultimately, I ended up enjoying the film, for the most part. I think it's a very smart heist movie that isn't concerned with the actual heist elements as it is with other things. And what I mean is, this wouldn't be a heist movie that I would put at the top of my best heist movies lists, right? I wouldn't watch this over Ocean's 11 or, some of the better heist movies out there. But I'd rather watch it than Logan Lucky or Ocean's 8. Both of those also came out this year, so maybe that's why I compared to those. All of that said, there are some pretty on-the-nose things in this film. Things characters will say that feel weirdly to the point in a distracting way. Most of it dealing with topics like race. It took me out of the movie, but that said, I also admire the stuff this movie tries to tackle. This movie has a lot on its mind, and most movies these days don't. They don't have anything on their minds. They just have, another movie would just have the heist elements on its mind, right? But this movie's at least swinging for the fences. So I will say I really enjoyed what this film tried to do. I don't think it's going to be a crowd pleaser, though. Like Chris, I think there are some strong performances, and I think the standout for me was Viola Davis, and I think Elizabeth Debicki. I think those two were the best in the whole movie. But yeah, right now I think this movie's pretty good, and I'm excited to dive into it a little bit more to kind of see where I ultimately come down on it, because I think at this point it really could go either way. But my initial thought is it's pretty good, and there are a lot of scenes that I've been thinking about in the past few days since I've seen it. And I can't seem to shake a lot of the scenes. It clearly made an impression on me.
Yeah, so I'll pick up from there. For me, I'm very, very similar to you in terms of my expectations for the film and what got me excited. Basically the first thing I heard about this movie was just Widows from Steve McQueen. And that's all I knew. I didn't know what Widows... I mean, I know what the word widows means, but I didn't know what the plot was. But I was just excited because it was a new Steve McQueen movie, because I've been a fan of his since Hunger. I absolutely loved Shame. 12 Years a Slave, while not my favorite film, is certainly good.
Yeah, there with you.
And based on those three films, to me, there's really no denying that Steve McQueen is a very talented director with very specific vision. So whatever his next movie was or is, I was excited for it. Then I learned the plot of Widows, and I saw the trailer for Widows, and much like you, Mike, my anticipation fell off at that point. I thought it looked a little bit too much in the trailer like a sort of run-of-the-mill heist drama thriller, at least a little more of that than I was hoping for, because I'm expecting something a little bit different than that from Steve McQueen, a little bit more original, unique, or concerned with character above the heist, right?
Right.
And in the end, I think that's more or less how the movie turned out, is what the trailer looked like to me. I in the sense that there's just a little bit more typical heist drama thriller things going on in this film than I would like, because I think the movie is a lot more successful when it's not doing those things. Everything in this movie that's not the run-of-the-mill heist stuff was working for me, because to me, Steve McQueen as director, he shoots great looking movies that are interestingly shot, and he handles very complex and nuanced characters very, very well, and works with actors and gets great performances out of them to bring those complex characters to life. He's really great at that. But when this film isn't trying to deal with the characters, or isn't trying to be the normal Steve McQueen film, when it's going into some of the twists and turns and more actiony scenes, I get a little less interested in the film. I think part of the reason I think we have a lot more characters than we need that we're trying to follow. And I would like to spend more time with like some of the more main characters and let them be more nuanced, which goes to what you were saying, Chris, a little bit about Viola Davis. I agree with you on that. That all being said, all of the performances are good. And I think the mood and pacing of the film is really great. Like, I like how slow paced it is. Like, I think there were a lot of restless people in my audience. You know, I could feel a lot of like restlessness and people kind of talking and not that interested in the film. It felt like that was like the vibe of the room. And I think I've heard some other people say that they're like disappointed in it. And to me, I got what I expected in terms of mood and pacing. And I really enjoyed like how slow paced and how unconcerned with the heist and the action that it was. I just wish that it maybe gone like the whole 9 yards in that direction. So it's certainly not a bad movie at all. I think that there's a lot of individual elements about this movie that are great, but it just, I don't know, it doesn't quite come together for me in a way that's going to make me want to watch the movie more than just this one time. Like, I think I'm done with the film. I don't feel like I could get any more out of it by watching it a second time. I could be wrong, but I think I've seen it once and that's enough for me because it's just kind of average to good.
I have some things to jump off of what you said. While I agree with you that this movie is concerned with probably about 3 or 4 too many characters, I don't agree that the movie focuses too much on the heist elements. It strikes a good balance of heist to non-heist stuff, but I think it feels unbalanced because we also spend time with 2 politician enemies, like 2 henchmen, 5 different widows. We have the Daniel Kaluuya character that doesn't need to be there. We have him tracking down the widows, meeting characters for one scene only that he kills that we have no connection to, right? Like there's 2 scenes where Daniel Kaluuya shows up to a place, we meet some people, the next scene he kills said people, and that's a good scene. And in another movie, I would love it, but I'm here for the widows.
Yeah, there's a lot of technically really well-made stuff, and I think that one of the scenes that you're talking about, in particular with Daniel Kaluuya, is one of the best like technical scenes in terms of like mood and like just if you looked at it on its own and just watch that scene, like was really good. And but
absolutely,
in the context of the movie, not so important.
Right. Go on.
Sorry, I do want to clarify. Like, I don't think that there was too much of the heist in the film. It's just that the heist parts of the film were a little bit too typical and less interesting than the rest of the film. Like, it's like when we were there, it wasn't nearly as good as the rest of the film.
Oh, you know what? I think I'll disagree on 2 key scenes, but I think I'll save one of them for spoilers. But I will say that there is an opening scene where the husbands are pulling off a heist, right? I don't think it's any spoiler to say that in the very beginning of the movie, the husbands are pulling off a heist.
Yeah.
And it's filmed in typical Steve McQueen fashion, which I love so much, which is like in as few shots as possible.
Yeah, that opening sequence
love that.
Is great.
Steve McQueen will put a camera in the back of a van and plant it. And we are looking at the back of that van the same way anyone in the back of that van would be looking at. And we see cars chasing them. We see cars veer off. We see pieces of the van fly off. We see characters acting inside of the van in the foreground in response to the car that's following them. And it never cuts. Those elements, when Steve McQueen films action scenes, I've come to find in this movie, I think it can be quite creative and quite interesting in how sparse it is. Whereas in any other movie, we would see like 30 shots for that chase scene. In this movie, we see 1. And
Agreed.
I don't think that shot is boring in the least. And there are other things that happen later in the movie we can talk about in spoilers, but that's just an example. I think when filming this stuff, I would rather watch this than, a Fast and the Furious movie.
Well, yeah, that's definitely...
Well, as far as like heist elements go, right? Obviously, they're different movies to get all together, right? But they can't be compared. But you know what I mean? Like, I think this is a more interesting heist than something like that that's just full of like CGI and cartoon action.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what Steve McQueen as a director does really well. Like, I think every shot in the film feels so intentional. And like, I feel like every frame that we get in terms of like before we cut to the new shot is carefully thought out of whether or not it should be there, because the filmmaking seems so intentional, and like you can see the vision with like scenes like that where it's like, well, we're just gonna have this one shot out of the back of the van for this whole like chase, right?
I love that. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, so I'm totally with you that on like the filmmaking aspect of it, and like from a technical standpoint, and like choosing shots very carefully and not doing 100 shots in a chase scene or whatever, or an action scene is great. And that's one of the places where like the movie really, really, really shines.
Agreed. That was my next point, actually, which is just as with other Steve McQueen movies, the camera work really stands out. Beyond that shot of the back of the van, there's also a shot in the movie that's mounted on the hood of a car.
The Colin Farrell scene.
Yeah, and there's a scene where Colin Farrell gets in a car, and he gets in the back seat with someone else, and they have dialogue all throughout the conversation. You can't see them super well all the time because there's a reflection on the windshield, but the camera work on the hood of that car seems so intentional and so...
Oh, it's great. And what he's trying to say there, too, is really amazing, because you go from, like, the Ward 18, where, like, all his constituents are. Colin Farrell is a politician, and it's very poor. And then you kind of... I didn't even look for Colin Farrell and the woman in the car because I was so busy watching
the scenery change. The
scenery change to rich and opulent, and it was just like he says so much without saying a single word, right? Just with that shot and the things that are happening around the car, he's saying so much in that, and it's really amazing what he says with one shot, and it's great.
That is, I think, where Steve McQueen really shines as a director. Visual storytelling, sparse storytelling, as Justin mentioned earlier, complex characters. Where I think this movie falls short, though, would be like the dialogue. Like that scene in particular, the same scene. The shot was amazing. But then you get in the car and you have Colin Farrell's character being very on the nose with a lot of his like racial things he's saying. Like he's supposed to be a racist politician, and I accept that. That's good. That seems like a true character, right? That seems like a real character in real life. But a lot of the way this movie goes about tackling the subject matter, it seems so blunt and not necessarily implemented in the most artful way. Do you guys know what I'm talking about specifically? So basically he gets in the car and he asks like his assistant girl that's been with him the whole movie, have you ever had sex with a black guy? And it comes out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, I didn't understand that conversation. I thought it was really weird.
And I don't know. I mean, I like the scene, right? It doesn't make it a bad scene, and it's still good. And I understood what Steve McQueen was saying in it, but it felt a little different than the rest of the movie. Stuff like that. And there's another couple scenes where they dive into that, but it just felt like there was no real reason for him to ask that there.
Yeah, it didn't really come out of character. It felt a bit more like bringing up a point of discussion or like a social topic in the script somewhere, as opposed to what are these characters thinking and why are they talking about that?
Yeah. Which, if that's what the movie has on its mind, that's one thing, you know.
Right, and to go off that, because you said that earlier, that there's lots on the movie's mind, and I agree with that, but a lot of it, I feel like it had it on its mind and it brought it up, but it didn't really have enough time to say much about certain things that it brings up.
It feels like there's almost 3 different movies in here, and we don't get enough time with any of those movies, right? There's the Widows, there's the Politicians, and there's not quite enough time. I want to spend time with all of them, and what is in there is great, but it feels like it just doesn't have enough time to spend with them, to develop the characters enough, and to get it over the finish line.
Well, I don't know. I agree and I don't with that. I agree that I think Viola Davis's character could use more. But beyond that, I don't know that I feel that the Widows storyline got short-shrifted. I felt like I understood all the other Widows plenty. I felt like the heist elements were well balanced, and I felt like the politician elements were well balanced. I do agree that we have way too many characters we're bouncing between. But beyond Viola Davis's character feeling a little underwritten, I don't know that I agree that we spend too little time with these ideas. I think a lot of these ideas, like the racism elements, they're touched on, but that's all they need to do in a movie like this. You show us that shot, you give us the scene, and even though it may not be tactful and it may not feel born out of character, I still feel like we're not touching on these things too little. Like, I don't think that there's any one element that's getting short shrifted. I just think if you cut down on some of the characters, then we have more time to dedicate to the people we really care about. Yeah. I guess is what it really comes down to for me. I don't want less of the social commentary, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't want less of that either, per se. And I think we are in agreement, like there's something that needs to be taken out or stuff that needs to be added somewhere.
Right, like that's the stuff that makes this feel different to me. This is where I disagree with Justin a little bit. It makes it feel different to me than a regular heist film. Like a regular heist film would have been 90 minutes. This movie is 2 hours and 10 minutes. But even the heist elements, and we could talk a little bit more in spoilers, I think the last third of the movie is the strongest. We'll have to talk about that more in spoilers, but basically right now I think we're all kind of in agreement. I think we all just, seems like we disagree on how much of each thing we wanted.
Yeah.
It's something along those lines.
And I think we're getting into the area, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be speaking for you guys a little bit. I feel like we're all in the area of like focusing on the things that would have escalated the movie to like a better place, as opposed to like things that make us like dislike the movie and think that it's not good. I just want to reiterate, like, I think it's ultimately good.
Yeah, we may sound negative right now, but yes, a lot of aspects of this film I really, really thought were great.
Well, what I would say is I feel more positive about it now 2 days later than I did after I saw it the first time.
And I literally just saw it, so I haven't had time to
you literally just came from the theater. I'm interested to see how you feel like in 2 days from now.
Same.
No, but I genuinely think this is a good movie. And what makes me so sad is this is a 2 hour and 10-minute heist movie. And I feel like most people will be the exact opposite of what you're saying, Justin, which is like they will want more heist stuff, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be bored by the conversations about racism, and they're going to be bored about two people running for the same thing of office talking about different philosophies, yet both still being trashy people in their own right. There's a lot in this movie to unpack, and Steve McQueen has a lot to say, and like I originally hoped for, this is a heist movie made by Steve McQueen. It doesn't feel like a Steven Soderbergh movie. It feels good, and I also feel like I watched a satisfying heist movie as well as a character drama. So, it feels like Heat in that sense, right? Like Heat wasn't about a bank robbery. It is, but it isn't. And that's why Heat's so good, right? Is it's about character. And I think Widows is kind of the same balance, right? Which is like it focuses very, very much on the characters and what's going on and not just the heist elements.
That makes sense. Do you guys want to go into some listener questions?
Real quick before we do, I just want to say I think Colin Farrell is underappreciated these days.
Agreed.
He's always working, but never gets enough credit, never gets any awards nominations, and that guy is consistently giving out good performances.
Yeah, and he's not doing the like blockbuster films like he was for a little while. He's doing the small independent movies,
Yeah, that's true. It seems like in the last 15 years, he does not care about being a star.
He's just focused on doing acting stuff.
No more phone booths.
Yeah, no more phone booths for him. I wanted to shout out Carrie Coon. Was awesome in this. Every time I see Carrie Coon, I love her. She's from The Leftovers. And then Garrett Dillahunt was in this, and I love that guy. He's also really awesome.
Okay, so I'll go first with our first question, which is from Haley Ellisor on Facebook. Some of her questions we kind of answered, but I'll read what she said. She said, many seemed to be underwhelmed by the film as it was deemed too slow for those many. What was the Casual Cinecast team's expectations, and why do you think the action fell short for some and was just right for others? Was this ultimately McQueen's intention? And also, should Duvall retire? So I think we all kind of set our expectations earlier. I think as far as why did the action fell short, I would say it's just that there's not a lot of it as opposed to the action itself falling short.
Yeah, it's not particularly, because the action that was in there I really enjoyed, and that's not the focus of Steve McQueen. You know, he's more interested in the characters.
Yeah, like I said earlier, this is a heist film, but out of a 2-hour and 10-minute heist film, you know, you probably get like 30 minutes of heist stuff.
Right.
Oh, wow. I was going to say like 8.
maybe less than that, right? I was being generous. But basically, it's not going to scratch the itch that you get when you watch Ocean's 8 or whatever.
Yeah, and based on Steve McQueen's other films, like kind of like what you were saying, Mike, like I think it's totally intentional that this movie has the balance of character, dialogue scenes, and drama to action. Like it's totally intentional that it has that balance.
Yeah. So what I would say to his question is,
Her question.
for mainstream audiences, that's why. But I would say if you are familiar with Steve McQueen and you like him as a director, you will like this movie more than an average heist thriller, probably.
Cool. And then should Robert Duvall retire?
No.
No, I thought he was fine in it. I think he has a pretty unlikable character in it, and that makes, you know, I don't know if she's suggesting that she did not like Robert Duvall in it.
Oh yeah. Well, if you didn't like him, that's because he's doing his job well. And it means he needs to keep going.
There were a couple moments where I'm like, I can't tell if he's just like supposed to be so old that he's like forgetful as a character, or if he's like forgetting his lines and coming back. I had like one moment where I thought that, so maybe that's what she's referring to.
Is that Robert Duvall just being old, or is that Robert Duvall playing a character?
That's all. Yeah, I was unsure.
Stick around, Robert Duvall. Make as many movies as you want.
We also got a few other people write in. Epic Film Guys on Twitter at Epic Film Guys says, #Widows is amazing, period. That is all, period.
That's not a question, but it's a glowing review. So
yeah, not a question, but I'm glad you liked it, Epic Film Guys. I think it's pretty good as well.
I would say that was an epic tweet.
Epic review. Good job.
So Ryan L. Terry at RL Terry 1 tweeted at us and said, I saw it. It's an intelligent, emotional genre exercise that shatters the glass ceiling for heist movies, full of social commentary on racism, political corruption, self-worth, and gender roles. So I think it's safe to say that he liked it.
Yeah, spot on, Ryan.
I think so. I like most movies I consider to be intelligent, emotional genre exercises that shatter the glass ceiling. That's positive to me.
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely. And I will say we haven't really touched on the political element of it too much. And I don't want to focus on that too much because I don't really enjoy getting political on the show. But what I will say is I think I appreciate this movie more now, today, in this climate than I would have, let's say, 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. In my notes, I just wrote, politics suck.
Well, the thing about it is movies these days, I'm viewing them in a different lens. The past couple years has profoundly changed the way I view the world and people. Right? And so I appreciate this kind of stuff in my movies these days. I think it's important to put it in there, even if it's unpleasant and annoying to listen to at times. That's all I'll say, and move on.
Yeah, so up next, we got from Matt Ward on Facebook. He says, so glad you guys are reviewing this film. I don't have a question that hasn't already been addressed here, but just wanted to say I was struck by just how nuanced the whole film was and keep visualizing moments from the film days after seeing it, especially the beautifully shot scenes with Viola Davis and Liam Neeson at home and Davis and Elizabeth Debicki in the diner. I also didn't put it together until after that the dog is the same one from Game Night, which I didn't either.
West Highland Terriers, they're adorable. My grandma has them, and she's had them, like, she's always had, like, at least 1 or 2 West Highland Terriers since I've been a little kid. And they are wonderful little dogs. They're so cute.
And I'm pretty sure we should have put that dog in, like, the list of actors at the start, because I'm pretty sure he has more screen time than, like, even Colin Farrell, that dog.
That's true. Yeah, she did bring that dog everywhere. All right. So the other question we have for non-spoilers is, I want you to watch this on Twitter at IWYTWT. Says, despite some hiccups in the writing, overall great performances and gorgeous cinematography, I also need Viola Davis and Cynthia Erivo's workout plan because those arms could have carried the entire film.
Yeah. They looked ripped.
No shit.
there were scenes where like Viola Davis was acting and being emotional and talking, but like I was just staring at like
you were looking at her
that
frame?
muscle from her neck to like her shoulders. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
How old is she? Yeah, she's
Every time like someone picked up a bag or like picked up something heavy or just had like a tank top on, I was just like impressed.
yeah.
In awe.
And that's actually something that we haven't mentioned either. Cynthia Erivo from the movie that just recently came out, Bad Times at the El Royale.
She's good.
Yeah,
I like her.
liked her a lot in this.
Yeah, I really liked her in this film.
Yeah, I think she's been great in both movies. I think she's a really good actress.
I think we're going to see good things from her.
I agree. Absolutely agree.
So before we move into spoilers, do you guys want to recommend the film or not recommend the film?
I do. I think it's safe to say, if you've been listening to me at all, I think I recommend it. Just if you're looking for a heist movie, go somewhere else.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I recommend it. I think the parts of this movie may not equal a great film.
Rate it out of 5 right now.
3. The 3.5 is what I would say.
I'd say 3.5 is more fair than 3, but
yeah. I mean, the individual parts to me are great, but they just may not mesh together. That's the thing I've been dealing with it since I saw it on Sunday. They just may not mesh together very well in order to make a great film. So like 3.5 that could have been 4.5 if everything meshed together.
All right. Well, I expect a detailed analysis of exactly what you mean in about 15 seconds when we go into spoilers.
Okay.
So get ready.
I mean, to me, I don't feel like this movie necessitates going to the theater. I think you could watch it at home and enjoy it just as well, assuming you have like a decent looking TV and decent enough sound. I don't know. To me, it's not like something you have to see. I think if you miss it, you're probably okay, because I don't think that it'll get much in terms of Oscars other than like acting performances, maybe cinematography.
Nah, but you should support it anyway because it's not a sequel and it's completely original. And
Actually,
it's not doing too well.
That's not true. It's based on a TV show.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not a sequel.
There you
And
go.
it's not like a
true.
franchise that anyone cares about. So it's not like they're like dusting off like a number one hit TV show that was like popular for 8 years in the 60s, and they just need to like have name recognition.
Yeah, they're definitely not getting that from that.
All right.
So are we ready to move into spoilers?
Oh yeah.
Let's do this.
All right, let's do it.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
I'll tell you what, give me one cigarette you got up there, I'll tell you all about it. And here we go.
Okay, so now that we are in spoilers, I want to ask, did you guys see the Liam Neeson twist coming? I will go ahead and say before you answer, I saw it coming, but only about 3 or 4 minutes before it happened, and it got me. It made me profoundly sad, and I remember thinking to myself, as soon as it happened, it was weird that Carrie Coon was cast in such a small part, because I knew we would get back to her at some point, and then that's what tipped me off, ultimately, was Carrie Coon's casting.
Yeah, I will say I didn't recognize it until I saw the flask that we saw in the opening sequence, opening flashbacks. Yeah, and it got me too. I would say the betrayal, the way Viola Davis plays it is really good, and it got me as well. How about you, Justin?
Yeah, I didn't see it coming. I also didn't really like it when it first started happening. I don't know. It felt like a film that I didn't necessarily want to have a twist because I was liking what was going on. But I like that the film didn't really make it a huge deal. Like, it didn't really change much. Like, Viola Davis just walks away once she either heavily suspects or realizes that
it's that
he's still
character
alive.
stuff, right? What it does to her character, I think, is what makes it work. Because it's not played for a twist; it's played for a heartbreak.
Yeah. So ultimately, I was happy about it, but I didn't really see it coming because it just didn't seem like that kind of a movie for so much of it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think ultimately, now a couple days removed from it, I think it makes it stronger for it. Because although I agree with you, as soon as it cut into like the room, I was like, oh no, this is a movie that has one of these kinds of twists. This is not what I wanted or expected, or how do I feel about this? I think ultimately it makes the last part of the movie all the stronger. because I don't know that I would have had an emotional connection to Viola Davis at all had that not happened.
Yeah, that makes sense. I kind of wish he wouldn't have shown up at the end. Like, I get why it happened, but like, I also just like if that had been it, like she had just walked away and realized it, and then let it affect her. Because I'm not sure what the end, like when he showed up, really changed as far as her character.
Well, we can talk about that in a little bit. I think I don't agree with that necessarily.
Well, that's kind of what I was headed towards too. Is one of the things I brought up in my opening statement or whatever is I don't know that I get much of a character arc or an arc for Viola Davis. And like if we had known who she was before and how she changed, and I'm not quite sure that I saw the heartbreak on her face, but I'm not sure that I get exactly what I want from that performance. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's like undercutting my expectations and doing something different. Like it's doing something different than a regular film would do. But I just don't know that I'm getting quite enough character arc or enough change from her. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, I don't know that I could put it eloquently, but this is her getting out from under the shadow he has put her in.
Right.
Like the whole movie, she doesn't own her apartment. She doesn't own anything. I don't even know if she owns her dog.
Yeah.
Right? She's completely heartbroken. She's completely dependent on her husband, who feels trapped because of the tragedy that befell them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something you can't recover from. He felt like he was suffocating. And through no fault of hers, she was suffocating him. You know, her whole life was him. It seemed like after the kid, right? Like her kid and him. And the betrayal there, I don't know that it ultimately makes for a satisfying arc like you're saying. But I think, Justin, you mentioned you would like the scene not to have been there. I think if Liam Neeson had not shown up at the end and she didn't get the closure of taking him down, then she would never have metaphorically gotten out of her slump, right? Like she would never have become her own person. And that might be weak, but I think ultimately that scene is required for her to have an arc at all.
Interesting. I think maybe I'm not sure that I saw her as getting out of the slump.
I think that's what the last scene with her and Elizabeth Debicki is all about.
Yeah, so I did want to talk about it and see what you guys thought about that. Like the last scene of them looking at each other, and then the very last thing before we cut to black is her saying like, "Hey, how you doing?"
And like the only smile you see in the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's ready to move on.
Interesting. I don't know that I read that out of it. I was kind of seeing it as after that whole heist thing was done, she was looking for companionship because she was still all alone, right? Like I think that I felt like she got some companionship out of like the heist and working with these girls because, and where that comes from for me is like they made the point of like she could have just tried to bargain with the journal and could have left it at that. Like that's what Liam Neeson said to her. Like you could have done that, but instead you did all this.
Right. I think we're talking about the same thing, but calling it different things. So like you're saying she's looking for companionship. I'm saying she's getting out of her slump and she's ready to be social. Like the whole movie, she hasn't been. She's been cold. She's treated all the girls that she's with like crap. She's been all business. The only one that's shown her any kindness has been Elizabeth Debicki. And at the end, right before she goes, she's like, all right, if anything goes wrong, you girls are all on your own, you know? Elizabeth Debicki gets shot. Everything goes crazy. They split up and they should never have to see one another again. But then when they do, that all business demeanor has seemed to have been shed. And now it seems like she's ready for actual companionship.
Yeah, I can see it.
Like Chris says, it's not a strong arc for her character. Like I think she has a lesser arc than like Elizabeth Debicki or Michelle Rodriguez, whom we haven't even talked about. But I think they're both really good too, especially Michelle Rodriguez, who gets to do more than just scowl in this movie.
Yeah. There's a scene in there with Michelle Rodriguez in it that I thought it's the one where she goes in and she's trying to get information out of this guy, and the guy admits that he just lost his wife several months ago, and she's like, I just lost my husband 2 weeks ago. And then like both kind of start to cry, or she starts to cry, and then they kiss, and it's just this weird moment, this like grief kiss that they share.
Yeah.
And I thought I thought she did a really good job with that.
Yeah, and that's kind of one thing about this movie is like even little side characters like that get so much information and so much life put into them. It's just strange, right? Like that character didn't need that much screen time and that much to do.
Yeah, I saw that as I thought she was still trying to like potentially
Con him.
get information from him. Yeah.
That's
that's
possible.
That did cross my mind too, but I also took it more as like she was vulnerable and so was he.
Yeah.
But even if it is her conning him, I still think that's a very interesting side character who gets more emotional depth than necessary. You know what I mean? Like he could have just been some jackass that she conned.
Yeah, what I read it as is that she felt bad partway through like conning him and doing that. She was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then like regretted it trying to do that. Kind of this. It's like kind of the same thing either way. It's like very interesting.
Agreed.
Yeah. So real quick, if we can talk specifically about some of the like, I guess like racial social topics that were brought up. I just wanted to point out an example of like where I felt like the film had something on its mind but didn't have anything to say about it. And that was with like the death of the son, like the scene with him getting like killed unnecessarily by white cops. It felt like a thing that got brought up, and I'm not sure that it like having that issue brought up added anything. Is that one of those things, Mike, that you were saying that like it's okay to just bring it up? Did you feel that way?
Well, yes and no. I think it is okay to just bring it up, considering one of the main themes of the movie is the dynamics of racism in a modern day city where everyone lives so close together. I think that is one of the dynamics and themes of the movie, but not a super relevant one. So I see what you're saying. Where I mainly disagree is I think that it's handled enough to be in there. So in the flashback, that shows you that's why their son died. But I think, 10 minutes before that, you get a flashback of Liam Neeson. It's the first time you ever discovered that they even had a kid that died. He says something to the effect of like, I don't want you to think my biggest mistake was having a child with you, or something to that effect. And she says, well, clearly it was, because if you didn't have him with me, he would still be alive. A lot of the betrayal involved from the perspective of a black woman is discovering that not only did your husband fake his death and leave you for another woman, it's trying all over again with a white woman so you could have a white son after your first son met a horrible end due to you marrying a black woman, or Liam Neeson marrying a black woman, right? So like that's what's going through her mind. And so I think because the son died in that way, it makes the betrayal later with Carrie Coon and what does she call it? Like his white family, his new white family. Mm-hmm. It makes it all the more painful for her.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I can see why it's there now. I wasn't sure, but thank you.
Yeah, that actually...
I'm thankful for that explanation.
Did you guys not get that at all when you're watching it?
I mean, to be honest, I haven't had time to process too much
That's
of it.
true.
I just
you
know
literally
when
just came from the theater.
When it happened, I was like, oh, well, that got brought up, but...
Yeah, no, it really hit home when she's like, at the end, whenever like he's like, she starts crying and he shows up and he's like, I know, what I did was shitty, basically. And she says something to the effect of like, your new white family, and he just looks totally ashamed. Yeah, no, he totally made a conscious decision to have a white son this time.
Yeah, interesting.
The whole twist really just makes me very sad days later.
Yeah, I like the reasoning behind the twist too. Like it wasn't like him being like, I'm just trying to get some more money and go hang out with like Colin Farrell and be corrupt. Like I like that it was like the twist was done out of like grief and anguish and just like I
he
can't
wants
deal
to be
with
a father
anymore.
Yeah, and he also didn't even mean to put her in danger, right? He even said like, you should have just sold the journal and been done with it. Like he wanted to leave her, he was just a coward.
Why do you think he stayed around? Because like Carrie Coon says to him, she's like,
because they didn't have the money yet, and then Viola Davis stole all his money, so he had to go steal it back from her so he could go live with Carrie Coon and his new white son.
That seems overly simple for everything else that I was thinking about. I was like, because I had that thought initially, but it didn't seem like.
I think Colin Farrell was just holding on to his money for him.
Yes, I believe so. And I don't think I realized that till just now.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Colin
It's
Farrell
all coming together.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Yeah, see, it's pretty good.
Does anybody have anything else?
I believe we have one more spoiler question.
All right.
All right, so on Facebook, Matthew Gladney asks, how do you think the cultural/societal/racial elements were handled? Do you think they were integrated well into the plot, or do you think they felt rather obvious whenever they were included? I think we've answered this pretty thoroughly throughout the review. They do seem very obvious, especially in a couple places, but I wouldn't trade them in, because if I did, it would just be another heist movie. And it wouldn't be a Steve McQueen heist movie.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, as we just said, I felt there were elements that seemed like they were just tossed in to include them as a sort of hot button issue, but I think there's more to it than it seems on like first viewing and on surface level once you like take the time and think about it. So I'm not sure how many I would say just seem kind of obvious. Like, I think maybe the ones that do, maybe I just need to think about it longer. So I was handled well, brought up enough to be interesting.
It's definitely not heavy-handed, right? But I don't know that makes it bad.
Yeah, I guess it's like right on the line between being like too heavy-handed and being, bringing them up intentionally enough to where you get it.
Yeah, ultimately the movies, I think it's probably sitting it with me probably closer to a 4 out of 5 than a 3.5 out of 5. I don't think it would go any higher than that, and I think a lot of it comes from the fact that the stuff that's in there isn't handled as well as I wished it was, but like I said, I wouldn't trade it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming off, I think initially I said mediocre to good, and I would say just good. Just straight up good. Like, I probably would have been in the 2.5 to 3, and now I'm definitely closer to 3.5. So quite a change, really.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's exciting. I'm excited to listen to this review back now, again, after it's all edited, to see the journey.
Went on more of a journey than Viola Davis.
That's for sure.
But more satisfying emotional arc was had in this podcast.
Cool. All right. So does that do it for this episode?
I think so for me.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. And then, of course, thanks to Jake Wagner-Russell for doing our intro and outro music. You can hear more of his music at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
So join us next week. We will be reviewing Creed 2, which means Justin and Chris have a movie to watch between now and then. Also, as mentioned earlier, we will be putting out a Casually Criterion episode on... What are we doing?
Tokyo Story.
Tokyo Story! That's a good movie.
Yeah.
It is.
I'm embarrassed I forgot that.
Yeah, so if you want to send us your questions about Creed or Creed 2 or Tokyo Story, you can send those to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast.
All right, see you next time.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. This is my gobble gobble.
Is that your turkey?
Yeah, it was sounded like a chicken, though. It was weird.
Yeah. Now that was a turkey. See you later.